Hi guys, it's Mr. T here, and today I'm playing the tour guide. And as much as I'd like to be a beachfront resort tour guide and show you the beachfront here, it would be a very short tour because my beach is very short. It stops right there, doesn't it? Now I'm going to be your tour guide for my HRW, your online textbook. Now I'm going to work on the assumption that you've already gone through, watched the previous video, and you learned what your username is and your password, and you've got that set up. And hopefully you've gotten that saved in, so it's already set up. But if not, you kept a password that was really easy for you to remember. Okay, so I'm going to log in and this is Logan X-Man's account, and we're going to come into here, and let's start up in the upper right hand corner. So it came up as Algebra 1. Now, I teach Algebra 2 currently, so I'm going to change it to Algebra 2. You may log in and only have access to just the one textbook, most likely. But if it doesn't say the correct textbook, you need to get that changed. All right, so make sure that is the right textbook or the right class you're taking. We see here my resources. There are two yellow boxes here. When it says interactive student edition, most likely you're not going to be using it a whole lot, but as a tour guide, it is my responsibility to kind of show you what it is. But we're going to spend most of our time in student resources. The interactive student edition is the student edition of your textbook, but when it sets it up, it's got like your unit 1 here, then you got your different modules inside of it and your different lessons. And so if I'm going to open up the very first lesson here, it's going to preload. It's going to set it up and go through the lesson kind of like a PowerPoint or Google Slides, kind of stops along the way. It's the same material that you would have in your book, but they break it down into slides as opposed to PDF pages. Okay. And it's got, a few more pictures in it, things like their color, and yours is black and white in your textbook. And so then I can go here and you can see all the different pieces to the lesson broken down. But it's the same material that's in your physical textbook and also in the other resources. But I thought I'd show you that. It's just a different way of presenting the lesson, and that's why that is there. It's actually not a bad thing, but I haven't really utilized that as much. Um, more people are going to be more comfortable with the student resources tab. Okay, so let's go in here and take a little tour of what you're going to be able to see. And this is the same for Algebra 1 and Geometry as well. So the first up here in the upper left-hand corner is Algebra 2. So when I click on that, I'm going to see the stuff that you usually see in the very front of a textbook, or maybe in the very back of the textbook, or just general resources altogether. Okay? And so the stuff you see in front, the stuff you see in back, maybe table of contents and all kinds of things, reference materials in the back, student edition there. Most every single section has an introduction real world video, and so you can either access them through each lesson, or if you go here, you can get to a list of all the real world examples of real world math videos right there. So that's a place you can go to. One I really want to encourage everyone is called Math on the Spot videos, and in Algebra 2, and I think the rest of them, it's Dr. Berger, who's an interesting guy, and he does real quick little short videos on pieces of that section and lessons. And maybe you didn't quite completely get how your teacher showed you. This is a great supplement to that and gives you another voice to be able to tell you the same thing. It may be just a little bit different way to help you out. Does a good job. Really encourage you to do that. And then this other unpacking steps. Let's now go into Unit 1. So when I do that, again, I got student edition stuff that would come at the beginning and at the end of that. And so that's open that up and pulls up your textbook, and it does a little intro. There's the stuff in the real world. You're ready to start up kind of activity that you would do. And that's the stuff that would be before you actually started into it. Then module 1, I opened this up and got several things going on here before we ever get into the lesson. So you get your student, front things there. Um, Here's some very interesting things here. But this RTI T2 skills worksheet, um, this is extra practice, but sometimes people in our textbook, there's a lot of very, very, very good information in there. The worst thing about the textbook probably is the a lot part, right? It's a whole lot. And when you go into here, you can open up to some of these little worksheets, and there's a lot less. It's more focused information with a less distracting information, and I find those can be very helpful. And you see those underneath the RTI. And when I open up Module 1, you'll see here these practice problems. That's good too. But the ones that I really strongly suggest students to take a look at, because if you look in the textbook and it's just so many things going on, it's a little bit distracting. These reteaching worksheet right here, it really does. It doesn't cover everything in this section, but it basically does. Hey, this is one of the main and most important things in this section, and it goes back and gives you a little bit straightforward, more clear, well, maybe not more clear, but more concise, focused attention on it. Okay, it's got you a little bit going on it, which is very good. However, along with the reteaching, there's also something called reading strategies. It's a very similar thing too, but success for English learners. That's basically for this is a worksheet really set up for those where English isn't their first language, and so they're trying to learn math and trying to struggle with still learning English at the same time, and so they've developed this out. Well, they're not just for English learners. They're for all learners, because you'll notice this page here has a lot of white space. It has really taken the concept of whatever's in that section and really, really, really focused it down onto just the meat and potatoes. I mean, the very bare bones of what's in this section. There's a lot more in the section that's important, but this is the bare bones, real simple kind of presentation. And sometimes that's real helpful for you to kind of take a look at, and it gets some of the other distracting information away. So that's a real good thing that you can look up and use. And I know some of your teachers might actually pull those off and use those for worksheets, but even if they don't use it for that section, you can. So all of these things are available to you. And again, I noticed the math on the spot video right there, and it says for lesson 1.1, concept number 2, so there's not one for concept 1, but concept 2, 3, and 4, there's little short videos. And so it opens it up, and there's Mr. Berger. And this one's a pretty long one. It's 13 minutes. Most of them are under 10. Okay. And he does a real quick lesson on concept number 2 for that lesson. And so that's a really good resource for you. Strongly encourage you to use that. And then there's always the thing right here called selected answers from that section. Okay. It's not everything, but there are some from that section. So that's a typical setup for how you would use the resources, student resources. You would simply open up this, the unit, then your module, and then lessons. And there's lots of different things underneath here that you could use. But the core thing you're probably going to use the most is this right here. This is Student Edition. This is an exact PDF of what's in the hard copy of your textbook. So if anything happened, whichever way you're using, whether the PDFs or the virtual or the hard copies, these are exact duplicates in the PDF form of what's in the hard copy of your textbook. So you always have that to go back on. So let's go back here. Student resources, student book is right there. That's good. Now, the next thing you're kind of looking at is under my assignments. And I'm not going to go into all the details for that per se, but here's where they're listed. And you can see it. Just click the start. If you had saved it without finishing it, you would have a button that says, would you like to continue? And then you'll have a button at some point that says submit. And because once you submit it, it's done. It's a done thing. Okay. So you can save and hold it and then finish it later. But once you submit, it's going to be turned in. I do want to strongly encourage you to not pay attention to this due date. Okay, that due date is the date that the assignment opportunity goes away. The due date that you should pay attention to is whatever your teacher has said is your due date. Because what they have done is they have set a due date, but in case somebody was late doing their work and they wanted to give them an extended opportunity, the due date on the computer has to be further from what your due date is. And so at our school, we use Google Classroom, and that is where you're going to find your deadlines. Okay, so be careful. I know it says due, but that all that really means is when this assignment will go away for ever being able to attempt it at all, even if it's turned in late. You can't get into it after that date, period. It shuts down. So that's what it means here. So that's all that is the shutdown date more than the due date. The due date is whatever your teacher has said. And in my school, you'll find that in Google Classroom. Okay. Um, Now for me, there's something here. You got issues here that under details that you might want to know. But this is always important for in my class. I only want my students to do 1 through 13 and number 18 for this section. And that's underneath the notes section. Okay. So when they open it up, they'll have all the questions that the thing wants us to ask. But I'm only expecting them to do those problems. Or maybe your teacher has a different kind of note that says, be careful about, or when you get to number 22, think about this. Any number of things. You should check whatever kind of notes your teacher has left you. Okay. As you finish these activities, your progress report will kind of show up. And you'll need to talk more about how that works out in another video. I'm going to open up these lessons and give you some tips on how to work inside the lessons and how that worked as well. But this is just our introductory tour of the resources that you have on your online textbook in My HRW. Hope that was helpful to you. And again, I encourage you to use some of those other things underneath student resources, especially those on-the-spot videos, even if they weren't assigned to you. I think they could be real helpful. Have a good day.